Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for taking some time out at the end of what was probably a busy day, mine was, to come and think about this topic. We're living in a world that's moving very quickly and being driven by technology and technology changes. In fact, advances in computing power is probably the dominant force of change in our world in the last 3 to 4 years, as it has been for almost half a century. Computing power, the amount of raw processing power the computer chip has, the hard drive space that computers have available to them, and the bandwidth to transfer information from one machine to the other have all been doubling every 18 to 24 months for about half a century. But that increase in power just recently in the last few years has moved computers into a whole new space, a space where really they're just about catching up with our processing power. By about 2020, we'll be able to buy a £1,000 laptop computer that has as much processing power as we do. Now, I know that late in an afternoon when the day's catching up with you, it doesn't quite feel as if you are currently processing at about 10 times more than a supercomputer, but you are. I know when you look at the people next to you, it's clear that's not true, but it is actually. But we will, by 2040, be able to buy a £1,000, probably handheld device that has as much computing power as the entire human race combined. That's where we find ourselves in the history of technology, and that is impacting our ability to process data and to use the data that is available to us in remarkable ways. And this is going to impact every industry, it's going to impact every part of our lives. Just let me give you a few examples, because when you think about the raw numbers, when you think about computer processing, it can be a little bit abstract. So let me give you some real illustrations of this ability to gather data, process it in real time, and then use it in valuable ways immediately. Up in the top corner there, you've got Google's goggles. These were released, or glasses. I think that's what Google would prefer us to call them. But basically what it is, it's a pair of glasses that has a video camera in it. It's only got one lens, and it also has a tiny little projector. And it's connected to the internet, and everything you look at, it does a visual recognition on that, then goes into Google's database linked to the maps and brings back the data associated with the object you're looking at. So any building you look at, it downloads the information about who the architect was, when it was built, if there are any empty offices in there, what they're going for rental. If it's a shopping center, it might bring up advertising. If we're at a conference like this and I look at you, it will do facial recognition on you and find your publicly available data. Not your police records, don't look too worried, but just your publicly available data, and bring all of that information and put it on the inside of my glasses in a heads-up display. That's already available. $1,600 will buy you that today. They are also experimenting with putting it into contact lenses, which allows that information to kind of be beamed right onto your retina and then spring into real life, which apparently is a bit disconcerting. Very cool in the movies, not so cool in real life. So they're working on it. But this ability to see the data associated with everyday objects is going to really impact how we engage with the world. It's called augmented reality, if you'd like to have a look at it later. By Google. Now, Google are also responsible for that middle picture. Google said, well, augmented reality, our ability to know what's going on in the real world, the part of that you know best is your car's navigation system, the GPS or sat-nav on your car. There's the real road, and here you've got a little screen in your car that gives you the name of the road and the speed limit and where you should turn right and left. If the car knows where it's going, surely it must be very easy to then control in an automatic car just 3 things: accelerator, brake, and steering wheel. That can't be too difficult, and they were right, it isn't. They've put a whole lot of technology into that car to be able to make it driverless. Now, they've put some cameras in the car they've put a sensor on the roof, because you also have to be able to respond to the real world around the car. If somebody steps out in front of the car has to be able to screech to a halt and not kill anybody, and not bash into anybody else. And if it's raining, you've got to change things. They've experimented with this car, 3 million kilometers of testing at speeds of over 200 kilometers an hour in some cases, around very intricate circuits and racing circuits and on real public roads. Not one accident yet. It's remarkable, this technology. But what's more remarkable is last Monday, California gave that car a license. It is legal in Los Angeles. You can fly into Los Angeles airport tomorrow morning and get your luggage, go through passport control, and instead of going to a normal taxi rank, you can go to one of Google's driverless cars, type in the name of your hotel, sit back, and through the streets of Los Angeles, your car will drive you to your destination. By 2020, not only will it be legal in London and other cities around the world, I believe it will be compulsory. Because what happens when cars become driverless is not just that they get to be able to drive faster and better and safer, but they also get to speak to each other. And if every car on a motorway is driverless, and every car in a city precinct is driverless, every car can speak to every other car. And they can all decide what they're trying to achieve, and they can negotiate the traffic patterns a lot more successfully than we can do as individual drivers. This is the promise of technology, not just that we can do what we've always been doing, but do it better and faster. We can actually do things we've never done before. And we can do it in ways we've never done before. We're going to be able to not just link our computers into our cars, but we are going to be able to link every single electronic object in our homes, every single electronic object in the world to the internet. Every light bulb, every plug point, every door and window latch can be made internet connected, and we can then have remote control over this, remote control over every object in our lives. It's called the Internet of Things. Another thing to look up later. If computer chips can be made this small, because that's an ant holding a computer, then you can put computers into anything and everything. You can even put them into yourself. And of course, medical technology is another great example of what we are going to be able to do if we can know everything. If we can put computer chips in and around your body and know everything there is to know about your system, we can then give you information. One of my clients is Nestle. They're busy working on smart foods, where once we've got the information about your system, we can tell you precisely what to eat, when to eat it, to achieve certain results with your body. And anything we can't do with supplements and food, we can then do with DNA. Just 12 years ago, we sequenced human DNA for the first time. It had taken 10 years, 18 governments, 27 private companies, and a few $1 billion to do it. Now you can have your DNA sequenced in less than 6 hours for $299. It's not a made-up number. It's on special this week. Dinkum, you can go and have a look. The website's 23andme.com. And that allows you to have your DNA sequenced. And the promise of that is that you can get personalized medication. You go to the doctor, you're feeling sick, the doctor checks out what's wrong with you, matches that with your DNA, which should be in the database, and then precisely creates personalized medicine for you within one day. And we should be able to extend life expectancy dramatically because of this ability to know everything about us. Just a few examples, enough examples. In every aspect of our lives, in every industry of our lives, this radical power of gathering all the data, everything, using that data and processing it in real time, and then using it valuably immediately, this is what's happening in the world. And it's only been happening for 2 or 3 years. We're right at the start of a massive golden age of technology revolution and how this technology will impact our lives. In essence, what I'm saying is the revolution going on right now is a revolution of how we engage with information and how that information shapes and forms our lives and the industries around us. But there's one other big thing going on, and that is there's a generation of young people who don't find any of this frightening, who don't find any of this unusual. In fact, they're welcoming it and they find it entirely normal. That's these young people, not these 4 specific young people, they just actors in a photograph, but young people who were born in 1989. Or later. 1989 is a remarkable year, I'm sure you know, in human history. It was the year the Berlin Wall came down. It was the year of Tiananmen Square in China. It was the year communism collapsed. It was also the year that a young British scientist called Tim Berners-Lee invented the World Wide Web. But technically the language, HTML, or the hypertext protocol that underlies the World Wide Web, the web pages as we know them. He released it to the world in 1991, and the internet as we know it was born. At about that time, mobile phones were also coming into general use in the public, and email and everything else followed very quickly. And these young people who were born in the 1990s, they were born with all of this as normal. If you like, we can call them the digital natives. Those of us who are older than this, we are digital immigrants. Okay? We might be okay with digital, we might have a smartphone and an iPad and everything else. But digital is still a second or third, or for some of you I realize a 9th language. For these young people, it's their primary language. This is probably my favorite photograph in this presentation because these young people are actually sending text messages to each other. Okay? This is how they choose to communicate. They might even be in relationship with each other. And this is how they choose to connect. If you're not sure you've ever met a digital native, maybe just this video will help you. In fact, this is my favorite part. She has to check whether her finger is still working. A magazine is an iPad that does not work. Do you think she will ever read a print newspaper? Do you think she'd ever subscribe to a print magazine? How happy do you think she would be working in your office? Now, you might think it's okay, she's only 1, we've got time. The problem is that her older brothers and sisters, her cousins, the people born in 1989, started working for you last year. If you were born in 1989 and went to university, you started your career last year. And this is a generation who are coming into our offices. They've been in our homes for a while, those of you who have kids, but they're coming into our offices, and increasingly they will be your colleagues, they will be your staff, they will be your customers sooner than you can imagine. And we need to recognize this digital divide. We also need to recognize that this same digital divide exists all across the world. This is one of the fascinating things about how technology is shaping not just people in large cities, not just people in the Western world, but people throughout the world. The children of the shepherds on the plains of Kenya with their mobile phones, because I have never met an African who doesn't have a mobile phone. And I grew up in Johannesburg, and I've traveled around Africa, and the mobile phone coverage is phenomenal. And that mobile phone, if it has a data contract on it, which most of them do, has access to exactly the same internet that you do, and exactly the same Google search box that the President of the United States has. Technology is a fantastic leveler. In fact, more than that, in many developing countries like India and Indonesia and China, South Korea, of all places, technology is actually a leapfrog, because they didn't put in the old technology. They only have the new Wi-Fi technology. They only have the fastest technology available. And we're seeing all around the world these digital natives emerging in many, many different parts of the world. So what do digital natives look like? What are some of the characteristics of young people who are growing up in this new digital world? Well, you might know them as Generation Y. That's a label that many journalists use. Generation Y is an interesting title. There's a number of reasons that exist. Possibly the best reason for the title is this, but that's maybe too much information. They are the young people born in the 1990s and 2000s. And a few of their characteristics. The first and most important one is that they do want to connect with each other. Now, I start with this one because anybody over the age of 35 in the audience, you can't believe this. Because if you've got kids of your own, or if you're watching young people, well, you will see them doing this. Let's go out and grab some coffee. We'll go out to our favorite restaurant together. Look how connected they are, as they go out to a museum together, or go out just to a diner, or maybe they're even at this very exciting game. They all like this. Maybe they're walking down the street and a celebrity walks past, or they're at the beach, or maybe they're driving through town. Yes, even the driver. Or maybe they're on a hot date. I mean, just look at them, how connected they are. Or, of course, very irritating for many of you, maybe this is them at a meeting, really connected, deeply connected. You see, technology has allowed them to connect in different ways. In fact, they are connected. All of those pictures I showed you, they were of young people connected to each other and connected to the group of friends who were not physically present with them. Sitting on their phones for an hour like this, they are connecting. They're connecting maybe deeper than you ever connected at that age, when you had your 3 friends that you went behind the shed and smoked a few cigarette ends with. Is that really what you want your kids to go outside and do? We forget what we used to do when we went outside. They are connected, and they do want to connect. In fact, this is why social media has taken off. Just last Wednesday, Facebook announced that their 1 billionth user had signed up. 1 billion people have signed up to Facebook, not because it's great software. In fact, I'd argue it's despite it being fairly bad software. But why did 1 billion people want to connect? It's because as human beings, we need connection. We've always wanted to connect. That's why we developed language. That's why we developed writing. That's why we developed the printing press. And now, social media is a wonderful way to waste a morning. You can spend 4 hours looking at cats falling into pianos and finding out what Lady Gaga had for breakfast. And there's all sorts of rubbish you can waste your time on, but it is also the greatest ways. Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, Google+, and all the other social media platforms are the best ways that we as human beings have ever devised for connecting, collaborating, building community, for being involved and engaged and interacting with each other. And of course, most of our companies block usage so that you can't access it during working hours. It's insanity. This is the best way we've ever come up with connecting with other people who might be customers, other people who might be potential customers, business partners, and we are blocking access to our connection with them. Yes, need to learn how to use this stuff properly. But today's young people can be taught how to do that. And we need to bring that, rather than just blocking access to it, we need to bring that connection into the workplace. I discovered this quite personally a few months ago, that today's young people want to be connected and engaged with the world 24/7. They live in a world where you have instant access to every piece of information all of the time, and they want that. I found this out when I took my 3 daughters out shopping. I have 3 daughters, 13, 10, 7. That's not their names. I said numbers were fine, but my wife insisted on names, even in the digital age. Here they are, Amy, Hannah, Rebecca, and we went out, dad and daughter day, to the shopping centre, Westfield actually, West London. And as we were walking around the shopping mall, as there always is, there was music playing. And just suddenly this piece of music came on. It was an amazing piece of music. And I thought, wow, what a great piece of music. But I didn't know who it was. I didn't know what the song was. Never heard it before. So I said what any 41-year-old would say. I wonder what that is. And I was about to get on with my life, because hypothetical questions are allowed in my world, when my eldest daughter, Amy, grabbed my phone. And she said, oh, Dad. And she picked up my phone, banged on it a little bit, and then held it up in the air. Now, some of you are smiling because you know what she was doing. I know now. She was using a program called SoundHound. Other options are available. Shazam, I think, is one of the other big ones. But she used SoundHound, which is a little app on a smartphone. By the way, those of you who have Blackberries, you don't have smartphones, okay? You have wonderful email devices, the best email devices we've ever invented, but they're not really smartphones. So just make sure you check out a friend's. And you can load on, your HTCs, your Samsungs, and your iPhones. You can load apps, one of which is the SoundHound app, which allows you to record 15 seconds of any music you can hear. It then uploads that 15 seconds to the International Music Database, which, listen to this, even if you've used this app, this is still impressive. It has a copy of every single version of every single song ever recorded. It matches your 15-second soundbite against that entire database, finds the song you've just been listening to, gets the biographical data, and brings it back to your phone in less than 3 seconds. This is mind-blowing. And it looks something like this. Now, this isn't the song that I was listening to. This is a well-known song, so you can kind of get an idea. So it's the name of the song, the artist, the album cover. It must have been designed in Japan, because it brings you the lyrics. You can start singing karaoke immediately. It gives you links to YouTube videos if they're available. Why do they do it for free? Well, there is an answer, and that is they earn commission when you buy the song through their system. That's how they make their money. So by the time that song had finished playing in that shopping centre in West London, not only did I know what it was, I also owned it. And 12 other songs like it. Okay, that's a little thing at the bottom here. Just like that. That's how easy it is. Now, the great part of my story is not how easy it is. The great part of my story is that my daughters think that's normal. They don't live in a world where there are hypothetical questions. You ask a question, they're immediately onto whatever screen is closest and they're finding the answer. They sit watching TV with an iPad on their laps. Somebody makes a comment on TV, they go, really? Fact check. And they go and check it out. They really do. They're engaging with the world in this no mysteries world that they live in. This happens when they shop as well. They don't call a salesperson over. They just take a photograph of the barcode of whatever product they're wanting to buy. And that uploads to the international database of, I don't know, barcodes, I suppose. Again, it doesn't matter. Who cares? It just happens. And all the information about that product comes back into their phone in a matter of seconds. And it links them to, say, Amazon, where they can search out and see whether there's the same product available at a cheaper price for delivery tomorrow morning. And it links them to review sites, which allow them to see all the reviews that other people have written about that product. And they also take a photograph of the product and upload it to Facebook and say to their friends, should I buy this? They're doing this all while they're standing in the shop. And standing a few feet away from them is a poor salesman. Excuse me, can I help you? And my 13-year-old daughter will look over at this salesman and go, what could you possibly do that I'm not doing right now? By the way, the answer to that question is if our salesman has some Google goggles on, he will look at my daughter Amy. Facial recognition will identify who she is. He will be able to link that to her loyalty card and be able to access the store's database, bring in every single piece of information that that store knows about her, including every single purchase she's ever made in that store or on their website and with their partners. It will give the salesperson a recommendation as to what on the second week of October Amy might be interested in buying based on all the history they've got about her. And then the salesman can walk over and say, I see that in the second week of October you normally come into our store buying a what looks like birthday present for, yes, your father who has a birthday coming up. I see in the last 4 years you've bought him the following gifts. We can complete the set you've been building for him. May I help you now? Can you see what power we get when we think about the data that could be available to us and how we could use that? I know that's a shopping example, I know it's a B2C example, but in your world there are similar examples of how you can engage with the world around you. And anybody under the age of 25 on your team thinks that's normal. This is the digital divide that is being created. This younger generation, maybe because of all of this that I've been saying, have a very different view of respect, a very different way of engaging with the world around them. Maybe this will explain.
1 minute, 1 minute please. Time, thank you. Would you all please put down your pens and bring your papers to the front of the room. Thank you. Well done. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry, you're too late. Going to be plenty of warnings about time. You failed. Sorry.
Excuse me. Do you know who I am?
I have absolutely no idea.
Good.
Yeah, you laugh now, but it's not so funny when one of those young people work for you or when you have one in your own home. They have a very different view of authority and respect and hierarchy, and we have to understand that. You can't fight against it. They just ignore authority generally. Like everybody everywhere throughout time, they want to belong, but they want to belong in a different way. Their belonging is not geographic. Their belonging is to people who share interests with them, to, if you like, I like the word tribes that they belong to, and companies who want to connect with them have to create that sense of belonging in some ways. One of the big characteristics we have to take into account of this generation is they see family as much more important than work. In fact, there are quite a few things more important than work. This is one of the biggest differences between today's young people and most of us, is that for them work is not a priority. It's not their thing that defines them. Many of us older people, we live to work. These young people work so that they can have a life. We'll come back to that thought in a second. The final characteristic is that they do live in an instant world, and they do want instant results and instant responses. So with just a few thoughts in our minds, what does this mean for us in the world of work? How should we respond to a new generation? First of all, let me say, I don't think we should be bending over backwards and just saying, these are the kings and queens of the world and do everything for them. There is a danger in some of the books you read and some of the people you hear that that's what you think needs to happen. I don't think so. I think they can be pandered to quite a bit. Part of this, unfortunately, has been how they've been raised. As a parent myself, I suddenly realize every now and again, I'm doing this myself. Where I mean to give an instruction, it ends up coming out of my mouth as a question. I, in my head, think it's time to bath now. I say to them, would you like a bath? And then they say, no. And I kind of get, what? You can't, it's time to bath. And I said, but you asked. And they've experienced that every day at school, every day in the morning when they come down to breakfast. Mom says, what would you like for breakfast? I don't know about you. I never had that question asked. I just came down and boom, breakfast was put in front of me. But today, in my family of 5, we had 5 different breakfasts at the table. Is that true in your home? It is for most of these young people. They've grown up their whole lives being asked, what do you want? Then they arrive, first day of work in the office, and they're told, please do this photocopying. And they go, I need to be asked nicely. I want collaborative involvement. And you go, no, this is your first day of work and you work for me. We need to help them to recognize that the world doesn't revolve around them. But having said that, we have a few digital natives in the room who are recognizing this scenario. Having said that, though, I do think there are just a few things in just a few minutes that maybe could help you get more out of them and have a better working environment. The first is, just sort yourself out, okay? Get tech savvy. It's not good enough anymore to go, how does this email thing work? And, I can't put a presentation together. Look, a 7-year-old can use an iPad. It's not that difficult. So go and get the training, just get yourself sorted out. Secondly, they're called Generation Y. They might as well have been called Generation Why? Now, I know every child has gone through that stage. Unfortunately, Generation Y never got out of it. And at 22, 23 years old, they still need to know why. This is the best management advice I'm going to give you tonight. If you are managing younger people, tell them why something has to be done. If you're kind of 35 years old and older, you were never told why. The best you got when you asked why was, because I said so, from your loving dad. That's not good enough anymore. I don't think it ever was good enough, but we let them get away with it. It's not good enough for this generation. They live in a world flooded with information. And if they don't know why they need to do something, or why they are the ones who need to do it, or why it has to be done by Friday, or why they should do it the way you've asked them to do it, if you don't tell them why, it will just wash over them. Tell them why. Trust me on this. Try it out. If you're battling with young people and you're, just try and tell them why you want something done. See if it makes a difference. Money back guarantee. How's that? Thirdly, they want to be challenged. This is a generation that realizes the system will not provide. Therefore, the only person who can look after me is me. Which means that I have to keep my skills up. I have to keep on building my network. My CV has to always be warm. And that means as a young person, they are looking for environments that will challenge and stretch them. They're looking for leaders and bosses who will mentor and coach them so that they feel they are growing and developing. As soon as they feel that's not happening anymore, 6 months later, they'll be gone, which is why most of them are gone within 2 years. Because we don't keep on developing them. Fourthly, reduce the red tape. This is a generation that hates rules for the sake of rules. Probably my favorite picture in the whole world is this one. What is the point of that sign? Really, rules that cannot possibly be obeyed. And we have these throughout our organizations. They kill Generation Y. They kill all of us, actually, but Generation Y in particular. And then finally, understand why they are working for you now. If they don't live to work, if they work so that they can have a life, wouldn't it make sense as a manager to know what life they want to have? Wouldn't it make sense to know why they're working for you? I heard the other day of a boss who drove up to his nice prime parking spot outside the front of the building in a beautiful new luxury car, brand new out of the box. And he made sure he arrived at just the time when all the employees were loitering out the front of the building so he'd get maximum exposure. As he hopped out of his car, a few of his staff came across and looked admiringly at the car, which is of course what he was planning. And one of the kids said, "Wow, boss, what a great car." And the boss said, "You know what? If you really apply yourself and work hard the next 12 months, I can get an even bigger one." And it's a joke, but yes, unfortunately, a little bit of reality as well. That's how young people see the world of work, and we have to understand they don't want to become the senior partner of your firm. They don't want to become the manager of the northern region. They're doing this particular job for a very particular reason. I don't know what the reason is. Do you? Have you asked them? Can you help them to achieve it? The more you can help them to achieve their goals, the more they will help you to achieve yours. This is the new contract of work that we need. Maybe there are 3 important questions I can leave you to ask your Generation Ys, your digital natives in the office. The first is this: what is success to you? What does your life look like 5 years from now? And we'll see if we can work together on this. The second is, and don't do this in a menacing voice, okay? Just get the tone right. But when do you plan to leave? This is asking them about their future plans. This is not about menacing them. If they say 2 years, that's fine. Now you know. I personally believe you can get these digital natives to work for you for 30 years, 3 years at a time. And you have to constantly be thinking, right, they're thinking it's time to leave now. What can I do to show them this is the right place to be? And that's a different attitude from leaders. And then possibly my favorite question of all: how easy do I make it for you to do great work? Has your boss ever asked you that one? It's a good one. It's worth asking. We are living in a fascinating time of history. A time when the difference between different generations is bigger than it's ever been. Young people today are not just younger versions of you. They have different expectations and attitudes and different approaches to life. They're not going to grow up to become like us either. Technology is driving a different change, but there are other forces as well, politics and economics and social forces, that are reinforcing this change in generational attitude. We can't just keep running the world of work the way we have been running it. We need a change. The same would be true in your home. We don't have time to talk about that, but we've got some Q&A time now, so maybe some questions will go in that direction as well. We need to see the world in different ways, to bridge the digital divide. If you'd like more information, we obviously condensed this evening as Norton Rose does in these speaker evenings, just giving you a few highlights to think about. But if you want more information, please feel free to make contact with me, and I'll be sticking around for a while this evening. We can chat, but now we've probably got about 10 minutes or so for questions before we have to move to the other room for food and drink. Okay. It's compulsory, apparently. But any questions based on what I've said? Yes?
I'm not saying this is necessarily the case at Norton Rose, but certainly there is this feeling that, well, we had to put up with it, so why can't they? And so how do you So not necessarily people in this room would feel like that, but there are people in different
Yeah.
organisations, probably some in our organisation, who think, well, when we were article clerks or when we started out, we had to get on with it. So
Yeah.
how do you approach people with that mindset?
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. You know, that there are people who have this sense of, you know, I had to go through a certain thing. Articles was like this for me, and you have to have these experiences. The response that I would give is a number of things. First of all, those people tend to be the baby boomer generation. They tend to be kind of 45 to 65 years old with a particular mindset. And the interesting thing is I think that most of them are saying that because they're jealous. That they realize that the world is changing, and they realize actually they should be changing as well, but they kind of want to hang on to something. The interesting response, one of the ways, which is actually not a direct response to their statement at all, but it's to show them that actually in a few years' time, those baby boomers, one of the remarkable things about the world we live in right now is the life expectancy increase that we all have. All of you are living 1 day longer every week at the moment. More than half of all the people who have ever turned 80 are still alive. Okay? There's a thought. Okay, it's true. 146 million people are over the age of 80 at the moment, and that's about half of all the people who've ever turned 80 in the history of the world. And we are going to live longer than we think we are, which means we probably have to retire later than we thought we were going to. And those baby boomers, even though they might retire at 60, 62, 65, whatever forced retirement is in your company, they're probably going to come back as consultants, aren't they? It's already happening. And they're going to work longer than they thought they were, but they're going to get, let's think about it, flexible working hours, working from home, flexi pay, use of technology to help them engage with the office. So all the things that they're kind of looking jealously on the younger generation, you just have to point out to them, hang on, you want those things too. So yes, maybe today's young people don't have it as hard as you had it. But actually the type of workplace that they are wanting to create is precisely the type of workplace that makes sense for you. I think that's a much better answer than just trying to explain in a way, to actually point out that we can work together to create a digitally connected and healthy workplace of the future. But it is a common complaint, you're absolutely right. Any other questions or comments? Yes?
It's adversely affecting the Generation Y, or the youngsters that go through the process now, that they're living in a life of constant multitasking, like they're watching TV, for instance, with an iPad on the lap, and then sort of just checking to see what views and reviews are and what's being said live and that sort of thing. But when they get to the office then, are they also on conference calls but emailing their work colleagues at the same time and text messaging about the receiving plans and that sort of thing? Are they better at it than us? Or?
They certainly are much better at multitasking than we are. So every now and again I read a report of somebody saying, actually, you know what, you really can't multitask. I know you think you can, but you can't. I always look for the age of the person who wrote that report. They are always older than 40. Seriously, the research is showing that younger people's brains are actually being wired differently. It's a remarkable thing that's going on. Some people are going so far as to say we're actually speeding up a little bit of evolution at the moment because actually our children's brains are physically different. I don't know enough to know whether that's true or not, but it would make sense to me. Certainly I know that they can multitask better than us. So at one level, I think there's some fantastic things happening, and I think it's opening up possibilities that we haven't seen before. I also think their mental picture of the world is very different, and I think it's going to bring some amazing innovations and amazing approaches to the world of work. But one of the big downsides is that today's young people get to be 1,000 miles wide and an inch deep. And actually in certain professions, I started life as a chartered accountant at KPMG, and in some professions you actually need to be 1,000 miles deep, even if you're only an inch wide. We probably need to find the middle ground between those two possibilities. But we do need that depth of knowledge. So the engineering profession, I think, is the one that's suffering the most at the moment, because you've got this generation of 50-something-year-old engineers who've got 30 years of experience, who can get a sense, they can walk over to a pillar and kind of just tap on it and go, okay, that's hollow. Okay, even I can work that out as an accountant. But they get a sense of something. I had it when I was an auditing clerk. You would do all of the work around this audit. I was given the debtors of this one company, and I thought I'd done the greatest debtors analysis that had ever been done. And then the partner comes in, looks at the raw numbers and goes, there's a problem here. How could you possibly know? You've looked at it for 30 seconds. But he does know. Well, she does know, because there's an instinct. There's that deep experience. And that doesn't develop when you live the life that Generation Y prefer to live. And we've got to help some of those generations to push through some of the tough times you have to go through in a profession in order to get that depth of experience and knowledge. So that, for me, is the biggest danger. There's a lot of positives, but that for me is the biggest danger. You were wanting to ask that?
A related question about technology at work. To what extent do you think we should be distancing ourselves slightly from technology? So for example, you take a sick day. That doesn't mean you take a sick day, that means you work from home.
Yeah.
And how do we manage that in terms of staying connected where we need to be and also distancing ourselves from?
Well, you've changed your question. Because you started by saying, how do we distance ourselves from technology, which is not the problem. The technology that connects you to work is the problem. The problem is not the technology. The problem is the fact that you can't disconnect from work. And we do need to do that. I actually think that is one of the biggest issues we have in the world of work. There's nothing clever about being exhausted. There's no efficiency gain, there's no productivity gain, there's no creativity gain when everybody in your company is exhausted. And most people are. Most people are exhausted. And we need to accept a little bit of inefficiency in the system so that we can make space for a little bit of creativity and a little bit of thinking differently. Some companies like Google famously do this by decree. Google decree that 20% of their employees' time is not allowed to be spent on doing their jobs. So, one day a week they have to be doing something different. And it's about a way. So when you go to a Google office, a lot of them look like they're just loafing around, goofing around, because Google recognized creativity comes out of a bit of space. And we don't have that space. We've got our Blackberries, we've got our smartphones, we're checking emails at 10 o'clock at night on the train on the way home, we check in on a Saturday morning and a Sunday morning, and you can't take a sick day because everybody knows you could still be contactable. It's not the technology. I don't think you ever have to disconnect yourself from technology. If I could, I'd have a computer implanted. I love technology. But we need to know when to switch it, to switch the work off and switch the play on. And of course when to switch the play off and the work back on. And I think we need to do a better job of that. And I think our employers need to do that too. It shouldn't just be left up to us. I think more and more companies need to be thinking we will get the most out of our people when we give them some space as well. And some companies are not allowing emails over the weekends. And Volkswagen had an experiment. The first 6 months of this year, Volkswagen switched off their email server for 9 hours every day. From 9 at night to 6 in the morning, German time. And you just couldn't send or receive emails through the VW system at all. That's not a long-term solution, but it's a point they're trying to make. And I think we need to be thinking about that stuff. That for me is what HR should be about at the moment, is thinking about that stuff and then engaging with IT a lot closer in developing a workplace that works for all of us. I want to show you one video to close, and then we can continue the conversation over something to eat and drink. This video was put together by some friends of mine back in South Africa, where I originally come from, if you didn't work the accent out. And I think it sums up what I've been trying to say about the digital natives. We haven't been able to crank the sound volume up as this clip deserves, but I'm sure you'll be able to hear it. See if you agree.
I am part of a lost generation, and I refuse to believe I can change the world. I realize this may be a shock, but happiness comes from within is a lie, and money will make me happy. So in 30 years, I will tell my children they are not the most important thing in my life. My employer will know that I have my priorities straight because work is more important than family. I tell you this. Once upon a time, families stayed together, but this will not be true in my era. This is a quick fix society. Experts tell me 30 years from now I'll be celebrating the 10th anniversary of my divorce. I do not concede that I will live in a country of my own making. In the future, environmental destruction will be the norm. No longer can it be said that my peers and I care about this earth. It will be evident that my generation is apathetic and lethargic. It is foolish to presume that there is hope, and all this will come true unless we choose to reverse it. There is hope. It is foolish to presume that my generation is apathetic and lethargic. It will be evident that my peers and I care about this earth. No longer can it be said that environmental destruction will be the norm. In the future, I will live in a country of my own making. I do not concede that 30 years from now I will be celebrating the 10th anniversary of my divorce. Experts tell me this is a quick fix society, but this will not be true in my era. Families stayed together once upon a time. I tell you this, family is more important than work. I have my priorities straight because my employer will know that they are not the most important thing in my life. So in 30 years, I will tell my children, money will make me happy is a lie, and true happiness comes from within. I realize this may be a shock, but I can change the world, and I refuse to believe that I'm part of a lost generation.
Thank you. Thank you very much.